Welcome to ACTPod, a podcast show that sheds light on the stories and impact of the social sector. The show is proudly powered by Aspire Coronation Trust Foundation. Let's begin the change.
Good morning from Lagos, Nigeria. My name is Ndifreke Okwebunam. I'm here hosting the very first edition of the ACTPod, Our Story, Our Continent. On this edition of the show, we're going to have with us a quintessential leader on the African continent. She has over 20 years' experience supporting non-profits, social enterprises with strategy and putting structures into the organization to ensure sustainability. She's passionate about the social sector. She's passionate about impact on the continent and ensuring that we change lives. I have with me here Osayi Alile, the CEO of Aspire Coronation Trust Foundation. As most of you would know, ACT Foundation.
Good morning. When you said guest, I was thinking to myself, as if I was an outsider, but it's just exciting to be here this morning.
It's a pleasure
Our
to have
very
you.
first.
Yes. We are so excited about this opportunity to share with you stories on the continent of Africa and the great work that Africans are doing to solve African problems.
Yeah.
So we're going to go right into it. Today, we're going to be talking about ACT Foundation. I'm talking about our philanthropy journey. And we're just going to jump right into it. Osayi, tell us about Aspire Coronation Trust Foundation.
Let me first of all just say it's such a pleasure because when this came up, we're talking about our story and our continent. One of the things for me especially was because there's so much to tell, so much to talk about. And in the last few years when we've spoken about this sector, we tell the stories, but it's not documented. So I must say technology has taken us to a different realm, and I'm looking forward to all the stories I will hear and also the stories we share, the challenges, the successes, because it's not always one-sided. It's not always about successes. With the challenges, successes, even the failures, and how we can overcome them. So with Aspire Coronation Trust, we started in 2016. And for us, we're thinking to ourselves, how do we build something that is just not only indigenous, but also looking at the full view of Africa and how we can help impact, but also help to come up with solutions, because we know that there are so many challenges Africa is facing and the challenges that we see daily. So one of the things that we're thinking about was that we're trying to come up with a niche and say, okay, what is important at this particular time? But you can't be all things to all men. And then we decide to just, of course, choose enterprise, leadership, environment, and health. And that's where we have kind of focused on. And we've noticed also over the last few years, especially with the pandemic, that it's important for us to work and think of solutions that are beneficial to us in the continent. Yes, it's important. Yeah, we know that the international NGOs have a place. We know that it's important for us to work with outside other countries, but we also have to think about what do we require as Africans to solve Africans' challenges, and that's why Aspire Coronation came into being.
Thank you so much, Osayi. As you know, Osayi is the CEO of ACT Foundation.
Yes, I am. Sorry.
Right. And ACT Foundation is a grant-making organization, which means that it does philanthropy work on the continent. So when you think philanthropy as a whole, people always think about it from a corporate perspective. They usually think about it sometimes from a wealthy, high net worth individual's perspective. So you think of a Bill and Melinda Gates, you think of a Dangote on the continent. That's what people think about when they think philanthropy. But in your view, why do we need philanthropy? And is it still relevant?
Gosh. Especially now. No, I think it's even more relevant now than it used to be. Africans have always been philanthropic. Of course, we've done it in a very traditional way. We've always taken care of our own. I think it's getting a bit not as the way it was done in those days. Every family, you sit down in a room with 10 Africans across board, and you ask them, have you always lived alone? First of all, they'll say, of course not. My parents have always had a cousin, a relative, or I've lived with a cousin or a relative. Or when somebody dies, we always go there every day. We do this. When somebody's ill, my mom always goes to the house for the next 2 weeks, feeding them. My mom's turn is this month, So we've always had that mindset of welfare. And charity to other people. The only thing is that we didn't define it as philanthropy. But it's just normal that people think to themselves, what's happening next door? Somebody has identified, before you even announce the death, everybody has appeared. The whole neighborhood has come. They are taking your children. They've gone to pick them from school. They are bringing food every day. It's who we are as human beings. It's who we are as Africans. But now we have to say, with the challenges we face, now to do it in a more strategic way, to do it in a more structured manner. So I don't think it's still more relevant now, but I don't think it's gone out of fashion. I think it's now that we need to just do it in a more, in a bigger and a better way. So it's more sustainable in the long term, and people are more aware of what we do as people. So we are domiciled in Lagos. But we have programs in all the states except one, and I think that will hopefully that will change very soon. Yeah. And also doing programs in a few African countries. So philanthropy, it's not just only looking inwards; it's looking outwards to trying to find out who is there and all that. And we must realize that government cannot solve all the problems alone. We have to all work together as a team. There's a tripod. You have the government, the non-profit sector, and private sector. So we can't work in isolation. Even as non-profits, we can't work in isolation. I've just mentioned our 4 pillars here. And even with the 4 pillars, you are still focused on some other things. So you talk about health, we're doing cancer, maternal health, and stuff like that. Somebody else is doing something else. And sometimes you go into a community, India, this is what you do all the time. And then you realize that you're going there only for a particular purpose. And then you start seeing the different challenges. Yes. And then you get overwhelmed. Then you want to solve all the matters. Well, you can't do everything. And then if you come back to the office and say, the children, they're also going through that. And the CEO will say, well, our focus is just A, B, and C. We only have grants for A, B, and C. And that's where the thinking of working together comes into bear. That's when you as an organization must realize that partnership and collaboration is key as well. And that's where philanthropy comes into bear as well. But in the tripod, not just as an individual. Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Osayi. I think one of the things that we always have to remind ourselves is that philanthropy is not just about the organizations. No, individuals have to get involved. Like when you think about the current war going on now in Ukraine, where people are contributing the little that they can. And when you put all of that together, you can solve problems in those places. So we all have to get involved in philanthropy. We are all philanthropic individuals and we can contribute to solving this problem.
Totally agree with you.
Yes. So just to thinking about that and thinking about philanthropy and how we've always thought about it, what would you say the changes are? What changes have you experienced over time when you're thinking giving, when you're thinking philanthropy? Now as a grant-making organization, we are looking at huge funding. But what has changed over the years? And then COVID has come in, and changed the dynamics for philanthropy. What are the things you've experienced?
For me, having been in this sector for a bit of time and thinking to myself that things would get easier, you realize that it hasn't gotten easier. The challenges are even more, is huger than it was when we started or when I started my own career. But in terms of philanthropy, I feel that people are beginning to understand more than ever before that they must get involved one way or the other. And people are asking questions more than before. And if you notice as well, even people that are not in the NGO sector, and you're just working in an organization, you're asking the organization questions and also asking in terms of wanting them to be more sustainable, more ethical. And so all those things do help because every organization now knows that. The young people that are coming now, they want to work for more ethical organizations. They want to work for people that are more sustainable and thinking in long term and not destroying the earth. That's one, not being unethical in the sense of destroying even the value system of the organization and the country that they work in. So we can see changes being made. But also we can see that a lot of, and when you mentioned COVID and what has happened in the last 2 years, the pandemic has made us realize too that in a funny way, everyone you have to focus on I don't want to say that on your own, because it sometimes sounds very selfish.
Yeah.
And we are also living in a very selfish time. But you almost must realize that as a Nigerian or as an African, in every country that you're in, during the pandemic, everybody went back to their own base. Even you that you were working maybe in Europe, you came back to Kenya. Or you now realize that, okay, this is going to last longer. And I was only here for 3 months and everybody started going home. The people that were working here, the expatriates that were working here, most of them moved back home. And so even in dealing with the pandemic, when we went to the fields at that time, it was Nigerians working in Nigeria and Kenyans working in Kenya, Ghanaians working in Ghana. And of course, even in terms of the financials, everybody was dealing with the problem. So we had to look inwards. And so even with us for Aspire Coronation Trust, ACT Foundation, we got involved with COVID at that time. And I became a co-administrator. And everyone that was sitting on the table were all Nigerians, coming up with Nigerian solutions for Nigerian problems, even if the pandemic was global. And so we now realize that our people had very different issues that they were dealing with. And it might not have worked as smoothly as we wanted it to, but all the private sector people came to the table. And I must say that everybody was speaking the same English, the same voice. They wanted a solution. What do we do different? How do we do different things? And the expertise came into bear. Infrastructure was used. So we all realized that we all have to look inwards and come up with a solution. And I think that's what has changed over the years. Work together globally, but also think in terms of Africa and whatever country you're from. Yeah.
Interesting. COVID was such an interesting initiative
was
that was
stressful,
celebrated around the world.
But very stressful.
Yes,
because
I can imagine.
Yeah, it's very stressful. The pandemic hit us from every side, but it went well. I was very proud of the work that we did, and I'm hoping that continuously, when we think of philanthropy, we think of collaborations, partnerships, because it does work.
Yes.
And it's actually, you find out that you do more.
Yes.
You do more than working alone. You do more.
And we've even found other areas or people in other areas like health, like environment, saying, why can't we have private sector coming together to solve all the problems, not just COVID?
Not pandemic.
Yes.
But with the pandemics, they're always very immediate. And you're looking for immediate solutions. And everybody, a bit agitated at that moment. So you find that it's easier to get help at that time.
Yeah.
But when you're thinking long term, we have issues, you're not sure, you just get relaxed. But we can't think like that, especially if we want to solve problems. We have to begin to think more long term, more sustainably. We know that the pandemic, this might not be the last one. So we have to start thinking, what do we do next? How do we get people prepared for things like this? Nobody knows what's going to happen tomorrow.
Yes. I totally agree with you. Osayi, ACT is 5 this year.
Yeah!
We're super excited.
I can't believe it.
ACT is 5 this year, and thinking about when the idea was being conceived and you were having all the meetings, thinking through how would this work. I'm sure there were times when you see it on paper, like, we'll get there. We've come a long way. The organization has come a long way. So tell us a bit about some of the impact that you've made. And you've been talking sustainability, and I know that that's also the core of ACT Foundation. Tell us about some of the successes and key success factors that has moved the organization to where it is now.
Okay. I'm really excited because, when you... 9 months of birth, of pregnancy, for women that are out there that have had kids, or someone that has had, in fact, we have someone in our office now that's just about to have a baby and we're all excited. So when you do the 9 months and you watch the pains, the joy that comes, of course, with hearing that you want to start this thing, and then 9 months of sometimes just the stress of carrying that child, and then you bring it to bed. That's just the beginning. Then you start trying to see, okay, what was my plan for this child? And that's what you talked about in terms of what the strategic plan was and all the ideas that we had in our minds when we conceived this. It was really, really exciting. But the impact has just shown itself. And we've done much more than we anticipated in 5 years. We've worked with 75 organizations, 1.9 million beneficiaries. We've worked in, I think, every state in Nigeria except one, and in a few African countries. So, when you see these things, 45 health interventions, 29 and 39 when you talk about all these interventions and what we've done in 800 communities across Africa, then you say to yourself, well done, Then you also say to yourself, we have a long way to go.
Yes.
We have and we do have a long way to go, but it's sometimes, and that's why this 5 years for me is important. Sometimes you have to sit back and say, well done. And especially because we've conceived this idea, we're here. So well done. But you see, for us at ACT, it's not only about just giving out grants. It's about working in building capacity. And we've done quite a number of capacity training programs, 30, I think, over the last few years. Our preface dialogue is exceptional, if I must say so myself. But you see, the key things here and why this has happened is because of partnerships. Yeah. When you talk about 79 NGOs that we've worked with, we've partnered with 79 organizations, and we've been able to achieve our goals. It's, partnership is key, collaboration is key. You cannot work alone. I say it all the time, even to myself. You have to find out what your strengths are. Our strength is to give. Our strength is to handhold. But who goes to implement? It's the NGOs that we work with. So that's where collaboration comes in. And they've helped us over the way to help us to achieve our goals. But also partnership with government, understanding what the government is talking about. You can't go into Tanzania and bring in the feelings of Nigeria to Tanzania, or going to Ghana and say, Tanzania, we did this there. And Ghana, what is government? What do they want to solve at that particular time? What do the people need? Understanding what every community needs as well. So even in knowing Nigeria, we also know that the 36 states are all different. And so that's where partnership comes into play. Strong government structures as well. Strong governance structure. I must say my board is exceptional. If I didn't have this board, I don't think I'll be able to achieve what I've achieved. And that's why, for me, governance is so key. The staff who you work with, I tell everybody that is a CEO, employ people that are smarter than you. It's something I say all the time, and people think I joke about it. I don't. I want people that understand and know things better than I do, and I can carry it and run with it. And, when we're doing all this, sustainability is key to, we've built an endowment that we keep on building. We are thinking long-term in doing everything that we do, including our people. Long-term. We want this organization we want to be able to look back, especially me, in another 10, 20 years and say, I can see how we started it, but I can see where it's grown to. So that's the beauty of it.
Okay. That's so key. And, from what Osayi is saying, this is ACT Foundation, started 5 years ago, and this is how far we have come, based on the impact that we've made. But we didn't do this by ourselves, as she has said. So think through, who are you partnering with? How is the government involved? How do you need support? Yes.
Oh my goodness. Evaluating your programs.
Yeah.
I know people we're going to have people talking about monitoring and evaluation going forward. That's the key. You cannot do programs and you don't evaluate. Then research and when we started research,
yes,
it's not something that we wanted to do, but we realized that it was important that we needed to have something and documentation to showcase what we're doing, and to be able to even give us the reason for doing.
Yes. And what it did as well was help us collect African data from Africans, So I think ACT Foundation has grown, and we will keep growing. There will be more that ACT Foundation will keep doing under your leadership and even going forward. So seeing all of these amazing things that ACT has done, and just thinking through, yes, you said it initially when we started the conversation, that you also have to look at the challenges and the failures. Let's talk about that, because that's something a lot of people shy away from.
Yeah.
Thinking about, I need to hide my challenges, I need to hide my failures, because you want everybody to just see the good, like the Insta life, just see the beautiful part of the work that you're doing. Well, we know that life comes with challenges.
Of course.
And it's overcoming those challenges that helps you achieve success.
Yeah.
So what are the things that you say that ACT has faced that to you has been challenging, and how have you been able to overcome that?
Okay, I think I'll just generally talk about not only ACT, but generally just the industry. one of the things I say is that you can't build a block of flats, 10 stories, with a foundation that is a bungalow. It's impossible. And so for me, the key is the bungalow, the foundation, and understanding that if you don't have structures in place, it's going to fall apart. Because if you do a foundation for a bungalow, it's fine in the first 2 years. But when you begin to grow and grow, the foundation cannot hold. And so that's the key for me in terms of the structuring and the quality of the nonprofit, in terms of getting things right from the beginning and making sure that you have governance structure. And that's one of the challenges that we face with every NGO we see. We realize that a lot of time, well, not every NGO, but a lot of NGOs, including ourselves, because we have to continuously build. But you feel to yourself, once you've started and you're doing well, you kind of rest on all your earth. And so even for us in going to our 5th year, we're asking ourselves questions, and we're going back to our strategy plan and asking ourselves, what can we do different? What can we do better? Because the world has changed.
Yes.
Indeed. The same story we're telling 5 years ago, you can't tell it now. The same way funding was done when we started is not what funding is going to be in the next few years. So we ourselves have to begin to think. And that's one of the problems we have as the sector, is that we get very comfortable where we are and not realizing that the world is flexible and it's beginning to change. So that's one of the biggest challenges I always see. And we must realize, put all those things in place also. Even when I'm talking about structuring, even for you as a founder or as a CEO, how prepared are you? If your CEO, especially if you are the founder, you have employed a CEO, leaves tomorrow, or even as a founder, how do you hand over all those things, governance structures, and it shakes the organization. It definitely shakes. And I tell people, it's not only leaving. If something happens, sickness comes into play, the CEO dies or the founder, what happens to the structure of the organization? So you have to start thinking in terms of that. And for me, that's really the key. In order to build sustainable organizations, we have to build foundations that are strong and are deep. And once they are deep, then it's a bit easier. And that includes financing, making sure that we have the right financing, because you might have grants now for the next 3 years, and in the 4th year, something happens and there's no money. How do you sustain yourself after that? And that's why I was talking about the endowment. And so the other thing, of course, any NGO will tell you is funding. Funding is changing the way it's given. And funding is not as, it's not available as it was when we started. I mean, I can remember when I started and I was on the other side, we could get funding from 20 organizations in 1 year. Now you're talking about 2, 3. A lot of indigenous organizations are not as structured as they used to be. INGOs are not coming as much as we want them to. So you have to start thinking of that. And funding is key in every, but also savings is key. So what we have to also think to ourselves that no matter how small the amount is, how do we save for the rainy day? And that's also in terms of talking about you as an individual, but also the organization has to save for the rainy day, because rainy days must come. Challenges must be. The pandemic, we saw it. Nobody was given, and they were only given for the pandemic. So if you are not flexible enough to change quickly, or flexible enough to change your programs to become on Zoom or online, then we're not going to survive.
Yes.
So we have to think through that process as well. Yeah.
Okay. Amazing. Just thinking about the funding, talking about funding, and as a grant-making organizer, I'm sure people are thinking to themselves, you don't have funding problems. They're not giving the funds.
Everyone has funding problems. So even the people that are giving you have funding problems.
So which is very true. So even when you think about that from the perspective of people applying for the grants, the money that you think is more than enough can only take a limited number of organizations. And I'm saying this so that organizations that are looking out for grants, you must do all that you can. Put the structures in place. Get your organization ready to access funding. And when you get that funding, don't take it for granted. And say, we have the money now and go and sleep. Do your best so that more money would come. Thank you so much, Osayi, for sharing so much wisdom here. So just as we close out, I would like you to you have said a few of them, sharing tips on certain things that nonprofits should do to ensure that their work is sustainable. I want us to talk a bit about the corporates now. What should corporate organizations, as we round up, what should corporate organizations be thinking about when it comes to philanthropy? We see a lot of CSR happening, and yet we are not seeing that same change happening in our communities. What should they be thinking about? How should they be thinking about it?
I think for me, I'll start from the point of view where with CSR in corporate organizations, it's the same thing I'll say to any organization, that they must think about why they are doing this in the first place. And a lot of times, of course, it's true, also their branding and all that, but they must think in a more holistic manner. And holistic is also sustainable, because you're not only thinking about your brand, you're thinking about the impact of what you are doing in the community where you serve anyway. And so those things are important. But I understand that philanthropy cannot always be their core focus. But as an organization, it's key. Now everyone is asking you, what's your bottom line? Bottom line is not only about finances anymore. But what I would advise is that when you are doing something in a community that you're working with, find organizations that are in that community that are already doing work, support them. There's no need to reinvent any wheel, because let me tell you, people have been doing this work by themselves for 20, 30, 40 years. I've spoken to women that have been running things in their communities for 40 years without anybody's help. So you can imagine if you come in and you now back that project or that process flow or that whatever it is that they're doing, that service, and then do it in a more structured manner and help them to structure these things out. What happens is that the impact also grows, your own brand grows, and then you're riding on something that is already doing extremely well. You're not starting and reinventing anymore. And then you're solving solutions that the community also needs. So you have to think more holistically. We have to also, as corporate organizations, partner more, collaborate more, so that we can all go in as a bang, not just like we're doing 2,000 here, 3,000 here. Can you imagine 5 organizations? And that's why COVID worked, because a lot of organizations came together and they did it together. So it was a bit easier to reach every country, every state in the federation. So that's really will be my advice. And then I'll advise the NGOs as well. There's some times that we feel to ourselves we are doing so much work, but nobody notices and we're getting a bit frustrated. But I'm asking you, how are you telling your story? How are you putting yourself out there? How are you using technology also? What are you doing online? You go to some pages and you're a bit upset about how they're posting their stories. So those things are key. Find people that can help you, even volunteers that can help you come up with a story with something that tells a story. And that's why we felt that this podcast was important, because we're telling our story for our continent. And we're hoping that as we tell the story, more people will understand how we've done this and help us to even take this to the next level. Yeah.
Thank you so much, Osayi. I know I said that was the last question, but I'm just going to add one little one there. What sort of supports can ACT Foundation give to corporate organizations? When you think about the work we do and our background, right, in terms of working with so many organizations in about 5 years, there must be a way that ACT can come on board and help corporate organizations think differently.
Thank you, Joe. Indeed. It's as if you know my heart. Let me advertise. Let me go out of what non-profits normally do. We don't advertise ourselves.
Yeah.
I mean, ACT is it. There's nowhere else to go to. This 5 years, it's short, but our impact is longer, it's deeper. We are who we say we are. Where we bring you in as a partner, and because we know the terrains of the non-profit sector, we understand impact, it's easy to work with us. It's easy because we know we're not going there because we just want to give you branding. We are going there to help you finish the work. So let us finish your work for you and make it easier for you. But let me also speak from the non-profit sector. The challenges are a lot out there. We need you. We need the private institutions. We need them to work with the non-profits, not only with ACT, of course, with a lot of other strong organizations that are doing the work there. But we want to handhold you, to help you bring out the best in whatever you're doing, but also showcase that we're putting finances in health. We can see the impact. We can see the numbers. We can see what we are doing. And that's where we're there in the first place. And we've seen it work. We've tested the ground. We know how it's going. And we're really looking forward to the next 5 years. So join us when you can. So I've done my own advertisements now.
Thank you so very much, Osayi. This has been really interesting.
It's been a pleasure.
We're out of time, but I want to say thank you for making the time, for conceiving this idea with your team to ensure that we're able to share our story as a continent. And for those listening, thank you for listening. We are available to answer questions. If you want to reach out to us, there will be information at the end of the show for you to send us email messages, and we'll definitely respond to you. Please, we want to tell your stories. If you have stories that you think are interesting, please reach out to us at the foundation. You don't have to be a Nigerian. Any part of Africa that you're in, you're doing great work. We're willing to tell your story. Thank you again, Osayi. Thank you everyone for listening. And have a very good day.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for listening to ACTPod. For inquiries and feedback, please reach us on actpod@actrustfoundation.org. Follow us on social media at ACTFoundation_ on Instagram and Twitter, and Aspire Coronation Trust Foundation on Facebook. The show is proudly powered by Aspire Coronation Trust Foundation. ACTPod, our story, our continent.